Like you said, my name is Jared Tate. I am the founder and creator of the DigiByte blockchain, and I have spent the past 3.5 years living in Hong Kong and parts of southern China. So a little bit about my background. I started out in 2012 as a Bitcoin miner, and I also was a trader, and then I started going through the source code. I actually placed an order for one of the first ever ASIC miners back in the fall of 2012. So I like to do this when I give speeches and presentations. By a show of hands, how many people in here actually have Bitcoin? Okay, so everybody's fairly familiar then. Okay, that's good. So we have a more experienced audience. By a show of hands, how many people understand what an ASIC miner is? Okay, all right, that's good. That's good. So I actually placed one of the very first orders for an ASIC miner back in the fall of 2012. Now, back then, I was mining with just a few gaming computers, and then I eventually created a hash farm, and it was great. You know, I was able to get sometimes 1 or 2 Bitcoins a day. But when the first ASIC started hitting the market in the spring of 2013, that ended quickly. I went from being able to generate 1 or 2 Bitcoins a day with about 12 graphics cards to basically it would take me, I calculated, 6,000 days. And this was February of 2014. So that kind of piqued my interest. I started studying and I started, really trying to understand what was going on with the Bitcoin blockchain. This led me to discover several what I call flaws in the core protocol and the design that have since been overcame, and this led to the launch and the creation of the DigiByte blockchain, which I'll get into more later, that we started working on in the fall of 2013 and launched in January of 2014. So what is the current state of the blockchain technology, Bitcoin, and ICOs in China? Well, as most of you in here have probably heard, on September 4th, the PBOC put out a ruling that basically effectively banned all ICOs. The market in China was insane. It was crazy hot. By July of this year, there was over 45 ICO launch platforms operating in China. A lot of that was done through groups on WeChat. How many people know what WeChat is? Okay, WeChat is the equivalent of WhatsApp or something similar like that. It's a messenger. It's basically the biggest messaging platform in China. So a lot of these ICOs were being operated and launched through those channels. And in July and August alone, $766 million was raised by Chinese tech firms just in China from ICO launches. So, and then as also most of you know, the PBOC later came out and banned all exchanges. So the ruling came out that by October 30th, so here tomorrow, all exchanges have to halt trading in China, and all withdrawals of consumer funds have to be finished. So you ask, why is that? Well, it's important to understand what is currently, what just ended in China, and that's something known as the National People's Congress. This is an event that happens once every 5 years, and it's where, if there is going to be a transfer of power in China, this is where it occurs. So this most recent People's Congress occurred from October 18th through the 24th. Now, what's interesting, what they call the Piliberto, the Standing Committee, which is the top ruling body in China, 5 of the 7 individuals were replaced, and 5 of them retired, and they were replaced by new people. So this is a big transfer of power within China. Now, if you look at what has happened in the past, like the last time this occurred in 2012, there's a lot of things that happened before these events to help maintain stability throughout the country. So previously and this year, China banned things leading up to the event, such as toy helicopters with ping pong balls, pigeons, a number of different things, because they were afraid that these means and these tools could be used to disrupt the process and the transfer of power that was happening. So it's not a surprise leading up to this event that they would shut down these exchanges and they would shut down these markets. Because what happened in 2012, they also, before the event, shut down a lot of new financial instruments to maintain stability in the Chinese economy leading up to this event. Now, another thing that they also banned is they actually banned a lot of executives from leaving the country leading up to this event to help maintain stability in Chinese markets. That's in the regular stock market. So now what does this have to do? You know, what kind of policy has been put in place? Well, President Xi Jinping proposed in 2013 the idea of one belt and one road. Now, what that is it's basically recreating the ancient, Silk Road through, the Eurasian mountains into Europe, that old trade route, and also recreating the belt part, which is the old maritime Silk Road. Now, what does all this have to do with blockchain technology? Well, what better way to link all these different places and countries than by linking them together on a blockchain? So I've attended and I've spoken at several events throughout China, Beijing and Shanghai, and one of the most recent ones I was at, there were several Chinese PhD researchers that were talking about their approach to leverage blockchain technology to connect not only smart cities, but ports, so trading ports. One of the things and problems with international trade is there is a lot of barriers. There's a lot of resistance. There's over $2.4 trillion a year in fraud alone. So blockchain technology can help alleviate a lot of that. So this One Belt and One Road initiative, which was officially renamed in the English title, the Belt and Road Initiative, is basically a $5 trillion infrastructure spending spree across 60 countries in Asia, the Middle East, Africa, and Europe. So it's a very, very ambitious project, to say the least. So how is this process of basically utilizing blockchain technology going to be involved? Well, in January of 2016, the PBOC announced that they would eventually create a digital version of the renminbi, which for those not familiar, sometimes you'll hear on the news it's referred to as the yuan, but a lot of the title is renminbi, the currency of China. So this digital renminbi has yet to be released, but here recently on October 15th, an insider in Moscow, I believe he was the Minister of Communications, basically stated at a closed-door meeting that I confidently declare that we can run a crypto ruble for one simple reason, that we need to. If we do not, then after 2 months, our neighbors in basically Asia will. So the era of the nation-state-backed cryptocurrencies is about to be upon us. So, picturing that ancient or the new One Belt and One Road initiative, if, the Chinese government's able to leverage blockchain technology to reduce a lot of the barriers for trade and commerce through those different ports, it's going to be a much more efficient system. One of the things that Hong Kong has recently launched is what they're calling the Belt and Road Blockchain Consortium. And the idea is for ports such as Hong Kong, Singapore, and other ports to become what are known as oracles that basically help to establish identity on a blockchain that link these different parts along the trade route. And it is becoming very clear that blockchain technology is going to become a major part of this process. So now we get to the fun part. We talk about the Bitcoin mining hash distribution. So currently, these numbers on this chart are from July of this year. 81% of all new Bitcoins that come into circulation are being mined in China. So that's a lot. Now, this is slowly grown for a number of reasons. But how many people in here have mined Bitcoins before? How many people in here have thought about mining? Well, I could tell you, if you look at these pictures, this is what you're competing against. You are competing against basically companies that have been given funding directly from the Chinese government. So there's effectively a monopoly of Bitcoin and Bitcoin mining in China as we speak. So what does this really mean? I'm probably going to catch flack for saying this, but this is the absolute truth. And I can tell you with 100% certainty, right now, the Chinese government has the ability to kill Bitcoin. Now, how is this? This is because of the flaw and the bug in the Bitcoin difficulty adjustment system. How many people have heard of and know what the difficulty system is? So a few, okay. So what really this means is the block timing for Bitcoin is supposed to be every 10 minutes, right? Well, how do you maintain that? basically, when you're submitting your hashes to the network, there's basically it's an easy way to think of it as like really tough math problems. And the more computing power that comes on the network, the tougher those math problems get. Well, the problem is that adjustment in the difficulty of those problems only occurs every 2016 blocks, which if Bitcoin block timings stay at 10 minutes, that should take 2 weeks. Well, back in 2014, when we launched DigiByte, we had a 2-hour difficulty retarget. Dogecoin at the time had an hour-long retarget. And there was a phenomena where multi-pools, where you would have a lot of miners that would come together, would jump from one coin to another coin to another coin. So at the time, they would move from Litecoin, then to Dogecoin, then to DigiByte, then to a few others, right? Well, what we would see is we would see 5 to 10-fold increases and decreases in hash rate. And what this caused, we saw because of this pattern, our blockchain would literally freeze when we would have a sudden reduction 5 or 10-fold in the hash rate on our network. So we saw our chain freeze for 7 hours. And then that led us to develop something we call DigiShield, which has now been implemented in dozens of other cryptocurrencies, including Dogecoin, Zcash, and numerous other ones. And then we eventually morphed that into what we call multi-shield, which is a real-time difficulty adjustment. I don't want to get too much into it, but the point is, if there was a major power outage, or if the Chinese government came in and shut down all miners in China, you would literally have days, perhaps weeks between blocks, which means that when that next adjustment occurred, it might not occur for a few months. And when that adjustment occurs, it only goes a certain amount. So this is a very serious flaw. You saw this with Bitcoin Cash when it forked, which I was warning about on Twitter. I'm like, it's going to take hours, maybe days before they find blocks. And they're still having issues with their difficulty stability. So when the day comes that perhaps the Chinese do want to launch the crypto yuan and they no longer want to deal with Bitcoin, all they have to do is do a government mandate to shut down power to all these mining facilities. And you would literally have the chain freeze. So this can be fixed. It's been fixed in multiple other blockchains. And one of those blockchains is DigiByte. So I'm just going to talk about that real quick. Currently, DigiByte is the longest major public chain out there with over 5 million blocks. That's the equivalent of Bitcoin in the year 2112. We went through several network enhancements. Our block speed is 15 seconds, so we can handle a significant amount of more transactions. But one of the ways that we've prevented this centralization of mining is through what we call multi-algo mining. So we actually have 5 separate mining algorithms. So if you took all the mining power in China and you threw it at the DigiByte blockchain, you might get a few blocks, but just within probably a dozen blocks, it would even out. And it would be put on par with GPU and CPU miners across the planet. So it's a much more secure system. In fact, in order to 51% attack the network, you'd have to take over 93% of one algo, and you'd have to take over 51% of the other 4. So this has been battle hardened, it's been tested, it's been out there in the wild for over 3 years now. And actually since, April, we were the first ones to actually activate Segway before Litecoin and Bitcoin. We've actually had almost 100,000 full nodes downloaded across the globe. So it's a very secure, it's a very decentralized network. So this is just kind of a chart that shows where we fit in the industry. There's a lot of confusion on the types of different blockchains. If you want to look at this picture, just go to digibyte.io. It's up there. We tried to be, as direct as we could on where we fit in. One of the things that a lot of people don't really give Bitcoin credit for is that there is a lot more that Bitcoin can be used for, same with DigiByte, than simple monetary transactions. And by this, I mean the same chart could be also applied to Bitcoin. You have the ability to establish identity, to notarize documents, a whole slew of things. I could talk more about that later. So how does this relate to China and how are we using it? Well, the last 3 years that I've been in Hong Kong and southern China, I've been developing a platform on top of the DigiByte blockchain that actually secures documents that help basically streamline the efficiencies in international trade. So as I stand here today, our system DigiSign, which for those that are familiar with DocuSign, it's DocuSign, but with the ability to secure, secure documents and with proof of timestamp, etc. in the blockchain. So right now it's actually being used. There's factories in China that are using it. There's freight forwarders in the US. There's customs brokers. So there's an entire supply chain that has actually been efficiently increased. So our case study was about $200 million worth of goods over the last 8 months. We reduced the quality control and reporting process time from China to the US from 7 days to 1 day, because you have that, direct oversight that's made possible by a public decentralized blockchain. So if you go to digisign.com, you can sign up for a free trial. You can learn a little bit more about it. But the point I'm trying to make here in relation to not only China but other countries is, there's a huge movement towards what the people call permission ledgers, right? AKA privately controlled chains. Well, in the case of, international trade and geopolitics at large, when you have a neutral third-party decentralized system like Bitcoin, like DigiByte, like Ethereum, you have the ability to really enhance, the transparency for everybody. So it's a beautiful thing. I think we're just in the beginning stages of this. And it's really exciting to see where the future is going to go here. So thank you for your time. I guess if anybody has any questions.
Yeah, we're going to open it up to questions. Just let me know, and we'll bring the mic to you.
Yeah.
This is just a question about mining in China. Do you foresee any major changes as far as like proof of stake, proof of work coming to any of these cryptocurrencies, and how would that affect the Chinese market in cryptocurrencies since they're so heavily invested in mining?
Well, first of all, right now there's several projects out there that are proof of stake. There's several that are proof of work. There's hybrids. There's attempts to combine both proof of work and proof of stake. I mean, Ethereum's was their Casper release. They're planning on doing a hybrid. So I think it's every 100th block in the beginning will actually be proof of stake. There is undoubtedly a contention between Western developers and Chinese hardware manufacturers and miners. I don't know how that will unfold. I really don't. I mean, if you look here recently at the Bitcoin Cash fork, and then just a few weeks after that, you had the ban. I don't know what the motives for some of those people were, but undoubtedly, my personal stance and experience as a developer for 5 years is, people argue proof of work's inefficient, that it's a waste of energy, but the reality, it's the most secure system there is out there. So I don't see that going away anytime soon. I mean, even, people say Ethereum's going to go proof of stake. Well, the reality is they really don't have any definite plans to do that fully. I mean, you're talking 99 out of 100 blocks with a Casper release is still going to be proof of work. I think the biggest advancements you're seeing are things like Equihash, where you have mining algorithms that are designed to prevent ASICs. I think that sort of movement is going to keep going. I mean, there's multiple attempts to develop different algorithms to help maintain that decentralization of mining power. So, I think, if, like I said, I was talking about the kill switch with Bitcoin, if that happens, it can be fixed, right? And that would basically require an algorithm swap in Bitcoin to a different mining algorithm, or maybe a multi-algo mining approach. But that needs to happen at some point. Yeah.
Jared,
yeah,
I really appreciate your time here. I want to talk about DigiByte for a second. DigiByte's often associated with gaming. Mm-hmm. So I wanted to get your opinion. Where do you see DigiByte being used most right now, and where do you see it being used in the future?
So without a doubt, a lot of people tend to take a project and associate it with a specific thing, right? Because people want to know, what is this actually being used for? I see DigiByte being used for multiple things. The approach we're about to take when we're launching our foundation, we're doing a lot of different things, is, over the last 3-4 years, I've talked to almost every major bank, a lot of governments, a lot of corporations. Western Union's head of digital innovation brought me in. I talked to him for like 5 hours and their whole team, and several companies like that. But I've noticed anytime you talk to people about currency, you get all these objections, red flags, right? Like, oh, what about money laundering? Oh, what about terrorist financing? But the reality is, and this is the approach we're taking with DigiByte, is if you approach it from a cybersecurity perspective, because the underlying cryptography and applied cryptography with Bitcoin and with DigiByte can solve 90% of the issues that we're seeing today with cybersecurity breaches on the internet. So simple answer, our focus is on cybersecurity applications moving forward. But that can also be applied in the gaming industry. So there are people working on gaming projects as we speak. So,
well, would you venture a guess as to what government crypto would look like? Would it be like a SHA-256? Would it be, you said permission ledgers, would that still be something that would be openly tradable on exchanges? Or
I think it would be very controlled. It would be centrally permissioned. So you would still have a central point of issuance. They would be able to, introduce as much as they wanted in circulation. But yeah, I think at the moment, all the open source projects out there, well, there's some that are trying to do SHA-512 after the NSA memorandum. But yeah, I think initially it'd probably be a SHA-256 setup. Yes, sir.
I had read recently that Ethereum was certainly using smart contracts. I assume that's what you're working on as well when you're talking about trade. And to that extent, the article really spoke to ships that would go to port and be held hostage, saying, I don't approve of your shipment, so therefore I'm not going to pay you, and then renegotiate the deal. And smart contracts are supposed to come in and alleviate a lot of that problem. So is that what you're...
Yeah, just a quick note on smart contracts. Most people don't know this. Smart contracts have been possible on top of Bitcoin as soon as 2012, 2013. Same with DigiByte. The difference is with Bitcoin and DigiByte, you have a more rigid, secure environment, so you don't have as much flexibility. Whereas Ethereum, you have the ability to do almost, kind of anything, but that has its security drawbacks, as we've seen with certain situations. But yes, that same premise of you have an intermediate, the blockchain essentially is the notary and becomes the middleman that executes that stuff. So in the case of Bitcoin, a lot of this is made possible even more so with Segway, but then also with something called time lock verify. And then also multi-signature transactions. And then also with OP return, you have the ability to add a little bit of data in there that can represent an unlimited amount of external data. So there's some really cool stuff you can do with that. The biggest difference is the interface to do that has just not been easily explained on top of Bitcoin. And I'll take credit, DigiByte, it's not that easy either. Ethereum, it was much easier for developers to actually start doing this stuff and experimenting with it. So that's something we're working on to fix.
Hey, fantastic presentation. Really enjoyed it. Thank you for your time. I have a question that's sort of on the periphery of what you're talking about, but as somebody who has lived in China, it sounds like, for a couple of years and is obviously very deep within the crypto asset industry, China has a reputation, especially when it comes to the tech space, of preferring their own companies. They don't want Facebook, Twitter, Uber, Amazon. They want Renren, Didi, Alibaba, Weibo, WeChat, things like that. So I was hoping to get your opinion on where you see in the short-term future for the Chinese blockchain space. Do you see them as wanting to eschew sort of the westernized or Western created blockchains and create their own, or are they going to be trying to innovate amongst themselves? Sort of, how do you see the Chinese culture clashing with sort of the open source, decentralized ethos of the crypto space at the moment?
Well, I think you definitely see, Chinese-centric cryptocurrency. They've already emerged. I mean, it's a pattern been going on since 2014. But without a doubt, like I said, once the digital renminbi is issued, is out there, and it's dispersed throughout Asia, Africa, and the Middle East, I think that is going to be a Chinese, sphere of influence and dominance in that space with that particular blockchain setup. Yeah, okay, I think guys, I'm getting cut off here. So
we're tight on time, so we got to wrap. Yeah. But Jared, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
If you enjoy this content, please subscribe to our YouTube channel and click the little bell beside the subscribe button to ensure you get notified of future important videos and live streams.